One of the things that I always say to my students on larger games is, you're going to disappoint me. You are going to not do what I expected you to do. At the same time, I also tell them that I'm going to be really impressed by what they do, because they're going to think about things that I haven't even started to consider. And I think that's the real joy of simulations, is that you don't know what's going to happen. Often when people start out using simulations, they want to create a scenario that lets students do something, play a role, experience some kind of phenomena, but do it in a very closed way that forces them essentially to do things in the way that is expected. And certainly I've talked to some colleagues at various academic conferences who are very insistent about the value of that, who say it is important that students fall into the logic of the institution and they are directed instinctively, or not instinctively, but clearly towards a set of solutions to those problems. My personal view is that one of the real joys of using a simulation is precisely that things can go wrong, and in some cases should go wrong. That students need to appreciate the frustrations of social interaction, that things don't always go smoothly, don't always have a resolution, and that sometimes we end up at some kind of impasse. Now, students might be able to overcome that, but in some cases they might not. And whilst it's very frustrating for students to sometimes end up at the end of a simulation, especially an extended one, into which they put a lot of time and effort, without reaching an agreement, it's also very good as a learning opportunity, a learning moment to say, why haven't we done that? What were the barriers that stopped us and held us back? How could we have changed things to do it in a different way? So sometimes things do go wrong, and we have to accept that. Just as any aspect of society or social interaction can go wrong, and sometimes does go wrong, so too we have to accept that simulations create the possibility of failure, of non-completion of the task. The important point is to reflect on that and to feed back on it. And again, this is the point about feedback. If you don't feedback, then students are just left feeling like they've been cheated out of successfully completing the task. And if your assessment is based on a successful completion of the task, that's doubly frustrating. So again, we need to be aware that that's a possibility. We need to understand where we stand on that particular issue, whether that's something that we find desirable or not, whether it affects our assessment, how it will be fed back into the discussions afterwards. But it's certainly not a problem, and I think it's one of the great strengths of using a simulation.